So there we go. Welcome everybody and good morning. We'll see how it goes with everybody's load shedding schedules. Mine starts at 10. So if I disappear for a second, that's what's happening, but it should be fine. And welcome. Welcome to our OD talk. We've been hosting these since the start of lockdown. We had our normal OD cafes that a lot of you have attended at our offices in Woodmead. And the last one, the one that we scheduled for March 2020, we decided we're not canceling it, but we're doing an online one. It was our first online OD cafe. And we enjoyed it so much that we decided we've got to do this meetup thing more often. And it turned into every single morning from 9 to 10, there was what we call the OD community check-in. And every morning we would meet and we would sometimes laugh and sometimes cry and try and figure out this weird new world of ours. And together just try and stay ahead of the curve, help each other cope with whatever was coming at us, trying to figure out what's happening in the OD industry, in our client spaces, what are the new issues that's coming up and so on. And as life got busier, that then became, there was an OD talk once a week, and then it became every second week. And we're back to roundabout monthly, depending on public holidays and so on. So welcome. I'm glad you could join us this morning. And most of you knows WorldsView Academy. If you don't, we've been in existence since the 90s in various forms. And as per a lot of our clients, things change and we change, and we try and stay on top of things. So one of the types of work we've been doing the most since the start of this pandemic has been team development. It certainly was something that some clients of ours, some organizations realized that it's something that you can't put on the back burner. For other organizations, understandably, it became something that we are putting on the back burner because our operations are down and we need to figure that out. I keep saying that I think anybody in a people position, HR or whatever it is, in the past 2 years are the unsung heroes of the pandemic, because those were the people who had to cope with, okay, now you're at home. No, come back. Now there's hybrid. No, hang on, wait, be back at home. There's a new wave. There's new rules. There's this social distancing thing. People have to register when they come in. We have to do their temperature, whatever it is. And then also dealing with the human side of that. So yeah, I think anybody in one of those positions has been the unsung heroes of the past 2 years. And for us, we've been called on by some clients to help in terms of, we're worried about our teams. We're worried about the team leaders having to take on more responsibility, where previously their role was, whether it's right or not, more one of almost a project manager. It's now become one of having to deal with people's issues and trauma and grief and fear and anxiety and uncertainty, and of course their own. And I remember in one of the OD talks we had back in 2020, one of the topics were everybody's looking to the leaders to figure this thing out and to give us direction. And they're also just human. They're also going through this. They're also in a state of flux and panic and uncertainty and complexity. And they're expected to be these heroes. And who's looking after the team leaders? Anyway, so as time went on in October 2020, we hosted an OD talk, and the topic was almost what it is today, was what's different with team development, because Dennis, according to Gallup, engagement is now as low as 21% in South Africa. I'm not surprised. I attended a webinar 2 weeks ago, last week, where they said also said 1 in every 4 people in America are feeling that their well-being and wellness is top of mind for their leaders. Yeah, anyway, so in 2020 we hosted the same thing of what's different in terms of team development and team, what does team leaders need to know about that. And we were still in a very strict state of lockdown then, depending on the industry. Of course, some of our clients were in manufacturing or essential services, so they had to figure out, how do we do this? I remember at a stage we talked about bubbles. You know, you've got one bubble working one shift and another bubble, or one bubble works Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the other bubble, and then somebody from that bubble gets sick, so at least the other bubble could still come to work. And we had one specific client where their support services, they were a manufacturing company, and their support services also split into certain days. And the issues that caused, because, for example, the finance team of 11 people were working in bubbles, and for a year, the two bubbles never saw each other. And the issues that caused for this team, because it became basically two teams, really. And there was no connection between the two, because they never worked together. They were never together. Yeah, and then as we started moving into figuring out a hybrid models since late last year, especially since early this year, there's been such interesting conversations. I've been privileged to facilitate some focus group sessions for some of our clients, where they were asking people, what is it you want? What does hybrid look like? What would hybrid work like? And interesting things there came up as well, such as, yeah, well, you know, now we're back at the office, for example, Tuesday and Thursday, but we're on online meetings the whole day. So why do I have to drive to the office for online meetings? You know, if we do come back for a day or two a week, can it not just be the same day for the same team, so that we can collaborate? And on those days, maybe have the creative sessions and no online meetings. And then there's cross collaboration needed. So how do you handle that, etc., etc. So obviously we've been thinking about what has changed in terms of team development. This is one of the modules that sits in our higher certificate in AD and Change. And Beatrice, who's also on this call, is our master facilitator in the team development module. She's also the developer of that module. And although we've upgraded it to a version 3 up to the late 2019, things then changed so much that we realized that it's not the same. It can't be the same. Or is it the same? And we talked about, is it old wine in new bottles? Is it the same stuff that we're just repackaging? The webinar I attended last week talked about, it is the same, but some of the stuff you have to turn the volume up if we're working in a hybrid style. So that and some other stuff we will be exploring today. And just to start us off, start the session off, I'm going to create a few breakaway rooms. And I'd like you to just go and meet some other people on this call and chat about, why are you here? What made you attend today? What's happening in your world? And what are the answers that you are looking for, or what is the information coming at you? So think about that for a second while I set up the breakaway rooms, and then you will again. Okay, so just before we take feedback from your conversations, I just want to give you a bit of an idea of what the rest of the morning is going to look like. We're already a third in. We're going to take some feedback now. Then I'm quickly going to share with you what we saw back in October 2020 from gathering information from everybody. And then we have two guests that's going to share a bit of their experience with us today. Jabulile works at one of the big banks, and I'll let her decide whether she wants to tell us which bank. And they've been doing team development with us since June 2020, when they were completely remote. And I'd like her to talk to us about, as a team leader, what has she seen? What has the changes been since they're now working in a hybrid fashion? And then Dennis, who's also on the call, him and he's the HR exec at NWK, and him and his team went through our team development training workshop in 2019. So Dennis is here to tell us what he's seen has changed since 2019 up to today, in terms of what the relevant training was. And then Beatrice, who's also on the call, Beatrice, please chip in when and where you want. She's co-facilitating with me today, and she's also, like I said earlier, our master facilitator in the team development module that we have as a training option. Okay, so let's get some feedback from the rooms. I'd love to know what you were talking about. The first room, Aileen, Danielle, and Jabu. What were your conversation about?
I'm happy to give it a bash, and then the two ladies can just back me up. So, I mean, the question was what brought us here, I suppose. And all of us were kind of looking for answers, best practices, because we all are struggling with similar types of things, and we could all sort of echo what you were talking about, some of the challenges, you know, coming into the office, but then you sit on Teams meetings all day, or maybe your whole team is in the office, but you actually needed to collaborate with people who are not in the office. We also spoke about decisions that people have made and what it means now to sort of do this hybrid thing. So maybe it's selling your car, moving to another city, giving up office space, and then how does that work? And also just about maturity of the business in terms of decision making. So for example, even within one business, you can have teams that are more mature than others. So in terms of policy and dictating when you're in and when you're not in, and how do you make decisions, that can also be a bit challenging in an immature environment. You get a lot of feedback about what's fair and what's not fair when you're asking people to come back to the office and other people not. So yeah, we were all, and Jabu actually made a very important point. I think one of the other unsung heroes of the pandemic is IT support, because they also, their worlds just changed overnight and they really had to support so many people. So the tools that they have enabled us with, also one of the silent heroes, I suppose. So yeah, we were just sharing, I suppose, war stories, and we're sort of here to learn from other people and see what has worked or what is working. I suppose it's a developing practice at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, Danielle. We say there is no best practice yet anywhere in the world. You know, even the big Silicon Valley places don't know what to do yet, because they're back and then not and then never and then yes and and yes, the IT thing. Oh my goodness. I've heard so many organizations say that our digital transformation strategy that would have taken 4 years happened in 3 months or 1 month. So, great, thank you. Thanks for sharing. I love that you say we're sharing war stories, because yes, that's what it is. Okay, the next room we had Helen, Rihanna, and Richard. Any of you want to give us? I see Helen says be right back. Rihanna, you were in and out, eh?
That's great. Yeah, go ahead, Rihanna.
No, please, you do. You were part of it the whole time. I'll add in.
Yeah, I'll try and remember, but touching on very much the same talking points. We did, you know, Helen and I had a chat about the difference between people that are looking at a hybrid structure and the more old school that have just gone, no, back to what it was. And how that old school thinking is really being challenged right now, because why must we just go back? People are asking that question, which they wouldn't have done 5 years ago, even though working remotely was still a valid point then. So yeah, very much touching on the same touch points. It's a complicated thing, but I believe there's a solution to all of it. If you bring it all to the table, you can walk away with a solution for all of these intricate issues. So that's Helen, please add some more if I haven't done it justice.
That's great. Thanks, Richard. Sorry, I had to go get something warm. I'm sitting here freezing. My teeth are going to start chattering. No, that was really just it. And just kind of from my side, wanting to kind of get a sense of what the current trends are. I was sharing with Richard, for me, I've been an advocate for hybrid working since 2008, where I was sharing, I made a project, I managed to get a project with an Angolan team delivered from Cape Town in using a hybrid working type of model. And at the time, I was very, very proud of myself because I feel very passionate about, the fact that this is possible. So in a way, when this happened, when this pandemic broke out, part of me was kind of thinking, well, I really hope it doesn't, I hope that we get to work from home for long enough for the concept to really embed and feel like people can buy into it. Because if it was too short, I think people would have just thought, well, we just revert back to what we know. So, I mean, in a horrible way, of course, I didn't want people to be sick and ill and dying, but part of me was, I hope this lasts long enough for us to kind of like push through some of that resistance that the old guard, certainly, when Richard and I were talking about this, it's still there. There's this old way of thinking, and yeah, that was pretty much.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because if it was only 3, because in the beginning we thought 3 weeks, then we'll be back at the office. Yeah. And if it was that, or even 5 weeks, then we probably would have been back at the office, but because we had to figure it out, and then we did figure it out, and it became easier, I think, in a lot of people's minds to go, okay, but this can work. We could go on like this. Cool. Thank you. Room 3, Beatrice, Kanisile, Kyle, and Lawrence. What did you chat about?
I don't mind reporting back, but everyone else can jump in as well. So first of all, there was a comment that the context you created at the outset, Liesl, was absolutely spot on, just in terms of presenting some of the challenges. So felt very relevant from that perspective. And just some things that I jotted down while group members were talking. There was mention that there's a view that the global village is in dire straits. I thought that was quite interesting. In our group, we heard about balls up in the air, wellness issues really coming to the fore and needing more attention now than ever before. I think it was Carl who spoke about managing the grayness between moving from isolation to semi-integration. What does this mean? And this uncertainty on the part of leadership in terms of managing the grayness. And Carl also mentioned that in his organization, in the function that he has, he's been called upon to intervene much more than he would have before on the side of team effectiveness sessions, actually running team effectiveness sessions for teams in a face-to-face context as well. I asked, had they seen a lot of reshuffling of teams, downsizing of teams, change, regular change of membership, which has huge implications for team dynamics and how and what the team development should look like. And there'd been quite a lot of that seen as well. And I think it was Kanyesile who wrote about senior leaders being in a fearful space. And then also I heard that the call for individual coaching at the senior leadership level has just been hugely, the need has been hugely on the increase during the pandemic, and now especially during this kind of managing the grayness kind of stage. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And about that grayness, something I heard the other day that I thought was interesting as well. Somebody commented that remoteliness is becoming a word, like loneliness, remoteliness, which I thought, oh wow, because we've been talking about remote and disconnected and not plugged in and that kind of thing. Remoteliness, maybe one of the other new concepts in this. I still call it an emerging normal. I'm still not with the new normal term. It's our emerging normal. Okay, and then room 5, Dennis and Philip. What did you guys chat about?
Philip, do you want to? I can. You decide. You can go, and then I will.
Full in. All right. Yeah, we talked about a lot of themes, Rizal. You know, themes that came up in our chats were disillusionment with the workforce, to ask the question, you know, is this all that I can do? Is this all to life? Is this all to work life? And also we need to think about where that comes from is, you know, being in a trauma state for about two and a half years, people dying around you, family dying, your close ones dying. I think it's a lot of trauma to handle, and those questions will come up. I mean, if you're faced with that type of trauma the whole time, you are going to ask those questions. So we see that a lot. It is, I think we are in the start of our great resignation. It's not so easy in South Africa with the economy and everything that's happening at this stage. I don't know if I need to thank load shedding for that, but at the end of the day, I think when everything is settled, we will see more movement going to happen in workplaces. You know, being in the flatlands, as I call it, we are a bit cushioned more, but we are not out of the woods with that one. So looking forward to what's going to happen. But I also think if we see the, you know, people needed to change their mindsets a lot. And I'm not just talking about consultants, you know, changing their face-to-face to online, but also people doing meetings over technology, and you get people that is frightened of technology. So I think a lot of those issues made people want to go back to the office as well. I also wished that remote working will just keep on a bit longer, so that the concepts really get embedded, because it took me free deliverance of my policies to eventually get through, but still not 100% remote work is going to be allowed, you know. So that conservativeness in our management philosophy in South Africa is still a lot of barriers to overcome. And I think that gives the wrong message through to employees that we don't trust them and all those aspects. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on that as well. So Philip, I hope I have tackled everything.
To a large extent, yes. I think by way of summary, I would say, first of all, the trauma thing, very important. I think we generally underestimate trauma. The second one is time pressures. Is that, you know, people tend to pack in Zoom meetings like you won't believe, and the moment that you go over 1 minute, then you know, the other people start pressurizing you. The third one is obviously with that disruption, and then the last one is that I find, and maybe it's a personal thing, that I find that you know, remote work, specifically online, is quite stressful. I find that it's very difficult for me to pick up on verbal cues, non-verbal cues, and things like that. And that makes it more stressful. There's a higher opportunity for misunderstandings, etc. So yeah, that's my input, or more a summary of what's been said.
And there I am talking on mute. Thank you, Philip. The howdy-does were a bit noisy for a second there. Great, thank you, everybody. I'm going to share 2 slides with you, just to give you a summary of what we saw in October 2020, what came up in these types of conversations in October 2020. And then we're going to go into more conversation. See my screen? Yeah. Okay, so what we saw as being emergent practice in 2020, and this was as a result of quite a few webinars that we attended, our own OD talks, talking to clients and so on. The highlights at that point was the importance of creating safe spaces to connect and acknowledge fears. So again, that trauma, the grief, enabling or empowering people, or creating the safe psychological safety for people to ask for help, to admit if they're struggling, or they might, if we don't, they might become stuck and immobilized. For leaders to walk the talk, and this was really about being vulnerable, to set that example, so to be open and to say, I'm also uncertain, I'm also scared, I'm also going through the grief and the trauma that you have, in order to allow people to feel safe to talk about it. But how important it was for the leaders to set that example, how important empathy has become, how it strengthens the team, but that it also needs to be real care and real interest, not just doing it as a tick box exercise. And then something that came up was that giving teams the tools to understand themselves and their team members better was important at that stage, because we were all going through trauma. We were all being triggered. We were all being scared. We were all being quite stressed. And you know, if we stress, then we sometimes fall back in terms of maturity, or we act out, or our less mature, less healthy version of ourselves come out, and it's kind of surprises us. So to give people tools to understand that about themselves and those around them. And then the drive for effectiveness and high performance never stopped during the pandemic, and to help teams understand what this looks like now. And the theme of a new mandate kept coming up towards the end of 2020, where people felt that whether they're the same team or a new team, or there's been a restructure, the way they're supposed to get their work done was differently. And sometimes what is expected of them is differently. And sometimes the organizational strategy and structure has changed. So to give them an opportunity to understand and unpack these new mandates and figure out how to make sense of it. And then again, stop sticking plasters on the symptoms. Because a lot of that was that's being done. Oh, people are freaking out. Let's do something about that, and not actually addressing the underlying issues. And then developing the managers. And at that point, it was also because there was a lot of movement in terms of restructuring and retrenching and new teams and stuff. The theme was more around allowing these people to step up into a people management role. So you take your technical experts and your specialists who's really great at their job, and suddenly you put them in charge of a team of people, and they don't have those people management skills. So to enable them to do that, because otherwise you're going to lose them, because they're used to being a specialist, and now they've got to get their work done through people, and that doesn't come naturally. And what I can add there currently, since late last year, what I've been hearing in that space, it's this, but it's also the role of team leaders have amplified, in the sense of the team leader now has to manage the grief and the trauma and the loss and the fear that team leaders are feeling. So it's even more people skills that they need than ever before. And then this is a very full slide, but those were all the issues that we identified during the various workshops. So just quickly to go through them, there was change fatigue, overwhelming sense of loss. There was the camera off culture, how we used to work is differently. We've lost some of our work friends, whether we've lost them to COVID and being sick, or whether we've lost them just because we don't work with them anymore, we don't see them anymore, the connectivity issue, the identity of self, of team, and then the loss of lives. We had burnout, people felt overworked, there was new pressure on working hours, constant meetings, being available 24/7. So something there, something new I heard last week was that people were saying it's not work-life balance anymore. We should stop using that word. It's now really work-life integration, because those two places melted into each other. Then trust was a big issue. There's uncertainty about the future. So there's trust about, are you giving me all the details, or am I going to be retrenched soon? And then there was also trust about, can I be vulnerable? Can I say that I'm scared? There was a lot about not acknowledging issues such as fear, loss of connectivity again, fear of retrenchments, And then these retrenchments and restructurings were causing changes in job descriptions or roles. And there was a fear of jumping back into new roles and not being good enough, and therefore next on the list of being axed or being retrenched. Resilience became a hotter topic than ever, and it still is. I'm picking up it still is. And there we said again, understanding your own triggers, your own stress reactions, and those of your team. And then, like I said in the intro this morning, all this new pressure on all the expectations on the team leaders who are also going through the same stress and trauma. And how can we get them to be vulnerable enough to reach out and ask for help? And we were talking about what is the role of OD, and maybe Beatrice, what you guys talked about, the individual coaching. I'm glad to hear that's sort of becoming a more talked about topic. Then again, the mandate and new strategic issues not being fully understood. And then there was a big thing about getting all the voices heard. So that was a combination of, video off, on mute in these meetings, not speaking up, people withdrawing, not contributing. And there was big questions around why and how do we get those voices back into the room, vulnerability again. Where they are in process, some had a good positive start to the lockdown and now falling apart, and some people started productively, and the productivity by then started waning. Danielle, I swear that was something that you said. For some reason, I just thought now you were in that conversation, and I think you were one of the people that talked about that. But anyway, so some people had a very slow and hard start, but by end of 2020, they felt like, okay, I'm getting my productivity back, and other people started really productive and was in that dip. The fact that teams were not flexible and adaptive to start with, now you have to create this in a hybrid or in a remote fashion where they already have to be adaptive, and how do we do that? And then obviously tech still being an issue for some people, the previous split between work and home, like I said, and at that point, though, there was a feeling that team members were withdrawing into their personal space. And in that personal space, there was home life issues on top of the work stress. Then as it came up in the check-in this morning, a few people said we're dragging the old with us, expecting the new to be the same as the old. How do we let go? How do we embrace the new? And how do we embrace that it's still emerging? It's not whatever was happening at that stage was the new. And then the culture thing in the team, in the organization, in the department, it was in a flux. And a lot of people said that they were feeling like they were in limbo, waiting for this thing to end, waiting for the new normal kind of thing. And what is it that we have to do now? And then the fear to admit that they were struggling. And there was a fear because of maybe then I'm next on the list for retrenchment, or I get overlooked for the next promotion, or whatever it is, and therefore not reaching out and connecting. And also for that reason, not realizing that they are not alone. Okay, so that's what came up back in 2020. October 2020, and we'll throughout the morning, I think, bring that into the conversation depending on how we go for time. So I'd like to invite Dennis and Beatrice. Please jump in, and I think you and Dennis can have the conversation and try and keep it to about 15-18 minutes or so, and then we'll have the conversation with Jabulile after that. Cool. Over to you, Beatrice.
Okay. Dennis, I'm going to be making you the star of the show, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of context. When I came through to NWK premises in the flatlands, as you call it, and a very warm welcome you extended to me there as well. At the time, 2019, we had no idea what was coming, and I was just thinking about the program and the process, and there was some customization done in order to meet your needs as an organization, but with your team as well, and quite a few of your sort of HR specialists, learning and development people that were with you. And I think it would be fair to say that certainly the kind of atmosphere that was present at the time was one of high levels of collaboration, relative stability, a desire to truly strategically align what was happening in terms of your human capital strategy and your team development strategy as well with the business strategy, for example. I remember a sort of almost a comfortable feeling, you know, a happy buzz, lots of intra and inter-team collaboration levels, and I think some fairly long-standing work relationships in place, if I recall at the time as well. Yeah, so for me, I delivered that program or facilitated that program with you guys in a time of relative stability and in a time where what you were truly seeking to do was truly to create that strategic alignment between what was going on, the human capital level, the team development level, and the business strategy as well. So I'm going to hand over to you and ask you, you know, where are you at with all of the stuff? What does hybrid look like in your lives, if at all? And what are some of the challenges that you are coping with? So if I were to come and facilitate this program for you all over again now, how would you want me to tailor it so that it meets your needs today?
I hear you.
Yeah.
While I'm speaking, I will think about answering that question as well. But if I look back to 2019 when we did this was the start and rollout. We started the Troca culture change program in 2018, and part of that is, you know, flattening the structures, making people more accountable, but also looking at team processes, being more agile in our decisions and how projects are run and implemented. So that was the strategic drive or intent for this program, because I also wanted the guys that we got in there were the key pins for me, for the change agents, not just my management team that was with me there as well, but also some of the key how can I say, key pins in other departments as well. Yes, we had a lot of buzz. That one practical that we did, we enjoyed extremely well. We talk about that still today. But then COVID happened, and we put a big old pause on everything just to get our bearings in place, or where are we at this stage, what is happening, what needs to happen, reading all the guides and new legislations and everything, and put processes in place. So for that period from, let's say, March to an extent about June, we just focus on getting everybody happy in their hybrid spaces, working from home, getting new processes in place, making certain everybody is still connected. One aspect that we focused on very quickly is getting people to manage team meetings better via digital means. So we had a bit of training regarding that, and also making certain that our cyberspace is still protected, because that is one of the biggest, you know, threats when you go remote, is what's happening in the cyberspace. But then, as part of looking at work from home and the processes that were implied, we also came to realize that there are changes that's necessary, and we are rolling out that changes as we speak. And I think, as I also mentioned, that, you know, you look at teams and you say this team needs to split because that team works better with that team, so we need to incorporate that team there. This work process is not supposed to be here, let's move it over there. So a lot of that came from looking at, well, the world of work and how we do work, and that's going to change quite a bit as we move forward. I mean, we're splitting one team and putting them into 3 different teams at this stage, and keeping a core of that team left. So there's a lot of team interactions and interventions that's going to happen in the next few weeks. That said, if I look at where we practiced what we learned, and we started with our management team, and I can just say one thing, you know, the compliments that we are getting from our staff towards the management team is the first time that I've been in the company. I've been there for 20 years now, that people are saying, but we've got a very dynamic Exco team, and which is great because we've worked very hard to have that connectedness and trust within that team. But that team needs to roll out that now to the lower levels as well. One aspect that we also did is we took away one of our, well, let's call it department head. And we split that department in two, in the functions of IT department anyway, in the technical and also the software. I realized that there's going to be some interaction, headbutting and everything. So I started with the team process to get them aligned, get them focused on this, on what strategy, but also then looking at why are they headbutting between the teams. And I realized that the department head orchestrated that butt heading for many years. So we needed to break that trend because the team wasn't really in dire straits. And through the team processes that we implemented, I mean, they are moving quite happily ahead. Yes, we still got problems, but they are sorting it out much more on a mature level. If I look at another team that we also is EPCO, it's our oil refinery business. We had a new management team, so I also concepts of the purposeful team and what Beatrice have trained us on. I put them through that process, but I also did it from a culture change perspective. So I used the leadership circle because I want that behavioral aspects to come out so that they can see what their behaviors are actually causing. So that enlightenment is also an ongoing process. We started that at the end of last year, so it's still going strong. But if I look at our intention is to create high functioning teams, and we are on our way to do that, Beatrice, with many of the processes that we learned from you guys and also from the purposeful team exposure that I had. And I can actually say from a financial point of view, this will be our best year ever. In the 115 years that we are in business, this is our financial best year ever. We came very close last year to do that, but we shot the duck out of the dam this year. So hopefully we'll continue with that, but it is from a team process that is happening. If teams are not talking to one another, if teams do not share their barriers, if teams do not share their concerns, it is going to be detrimental to achieve any form of success. So that is our focus, and our main focus is still going strong. We also picked up on our Petroca lines, making certain that we enhance our culture and the culture behaviors that we want to see espouse, but also creating a more psychological safe environment as well. You know, I can't use this slang in the organization because they will brand me as a witch. So I need to come up with very conservative type of wording when we roll out projects. So, but I'm quite enjoying it. Otherwise, I would not have stayed so long. My plan was for 3 years, so I can't plan. But anyway, but I'm enjoying the culture. I'm enjoying, you know, the OD stuff and the psychometric stuff, and that was very new for the organization. And I mean, we've put in place over 320 processes for the organization, and also developing our own HR system, because we can't find any HR IT systems that is driving our processes the way that we wanted. So we're developing our own system. It's a 5-year project. It's going great. I've got a brilliant team backing me, and I think that is the key is we all know what is expected, where are we going with this. One thing that I also did, Beatrice, is at the beginning of 2021, 2021. Also from a wellness perspective, I put my own team through a positive psychology team binding session. It was about 3 sessions spread over about 3 weeks. And I must say, from a wellness point of view, that was the best thing that I could have done for my team. So I actually did that for many other teams as well, just to make certain that they can just reconnect with their purpose, the organization purpose, and with one another, and they can feel that they are in a safe space, and also just having that support system. And also due to that, I also trained a lot of people in trauma counseling within the organization, in all the departments, just to have that lookout for burnouts, people in stress, people in dire need, because losing people that you love and work with is not always good. So I think that was one of the key factors that we also implemented, just to make certain our staff, our employees and our team members still want to be at work, and that they can connect and support one another. And I've made it a point in our management team as well that they need to focus on where there are people that they see are struggling, and we do need to act fast on those aspects. So they're on constant talks with me that if they see a person, we have outside counselor that we are also have contracted to give that type of support. So from a team perspective, I would have been much further along if COVID didn't happen, and due to a lack of resources. But I think at the end of the day, being back at work, we have picked up those aspects, and I think the success that we are seeing at this stage is enormous. I see a lot more creativity coming through, innovation coming through, and yes, there are questions, senior level questions. Is this all that we are doing in our lives? So we need to manage that as well. And I'm rolling out from a team perspective for the management team. We are going to talk about the concept of trust and how we can instill it in the organization, just to make certain that we keep our hand on where we want to go.
Thank you so much for that really great picture that you've painted, and so much effort being put into team development at different levels in different ways. And what is also exciting about the work that you've put into this is I see you focusing on, the development of certain skills as well. You're developing team skills that you may not have, decided were important team skills to build if the pandemic had not come along. And I'm very mindful of time, and I'd love to ask you some more questions, but I am mindful of time. So if you don't mind, Dennis, I might well give you a call in the near future just to get a bit more information from you.
More than welcome.
Yeah, and sure, that's lovely. That's lovely to hear that you've managed to create momentum from where we were to where you are today. That's it sounds amazing. So thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. Thank you.
Thanks for giving me the time to share.
Thank you. Liesel, back to you.
I wish we had another half an hour just for this conversation. Dennis, just one comment on what you said. You said you can't use this like voodoo language kind of thing in business. I really believe so much of what we do in OD is undercover work.
Yeah.
They don't know that this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Craig always used to say Merlin is OD is Merlin to the king. So OD should sit like a little wizard on the shoulder of the CEO.
Yes.
And do its magic.
Yep.
Because if you know this language, people are like, oh, fluffy nonsense. We're not spending money and time and effort on that. So
Yep.
You want your team to perform better, more effective, blah, give me the team. That's all I need to
Very
know.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
very true. And you know, you sometimes I heard somebody say, "Oh, the dentist stuff."
Yeah.
So, and that is exactly that. And I think one aspect I can put in. I trained my whole team on coaching, and that intervention alone has got a huge impact in our organization. So we must never forget the power of that one-on-one coaching and team coachings as well.
Yeah.
Sure. That's another team skill.
That
I've
is
been taking lots of notes while you were talking, Dennis. I think we need to give Jabu a bit of airspace here.
Oh, so Jabulile has been a friend of WorldsView, like Dennis, for a very long time. And although Jabu is not in the HR or OD space, she was one of our most regular attendees of our OD cafes at the office. And often would hang around and some work from our office, and me and Roy would have more conversations with her through the day. She managed to get me in to come and do an OD Cafe for her leadership team in the bank in 2019, I think. And then as we went into lockdown, we obviously kept connecting. Jabu was one of the people who would pop in the mornings when we still had the regular check-ins, and still on Fridays. And in about July 2020, we started doing team development with her team. We use the Enneagram as a tool to understand ourselves and each other better, and to give us a non-judgmental language to explain ourselves, and also to understand the triggers. And then we use the Enneagram in things like change leadership, energy and resilience, etc., etc. So what I wanted Jabu to talk to us about today is, so we started with a focused team development because of lockdown and because of remote working, and the feeling that people were disconnected, and how do we get them to connect on a personal level, and so on. And Jabu, if you could tell us a bit about what you've seen since then up to now, because now you are in a truly hybrid structure, which I'm sure is still evolving.
Yeah.
But you know, you've kind of settled into something which might change next week. But Joe, just tell us a bit about your experience as a team leader. Jabu is a VP in the bank. She's quite a senior team leader in the bank. So her perspective is also coming from not the OD perspective necessarily, although I do believe that she thinks OD, but from a team leader perspective. So Jabu, over to you.
Thank you so much, Liesl. I was just enjoying Dennis's story as well. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll be coming to you for ideas. And yeah, thank you for facilitating so well, Beatrice. So I do believe that the journey that we started with you, Liesl, in terms of the Enneagram really helped, because that set the tone of our engagements. And almost at the beginning of the pandemic, that's when we started with the Enneagrams, and we loved it. I think one of the things that we started realizing that we can actually get to understand each other. And I mean, it was interesting to see how dynamic we are as a team. And I mean, we are a shared service, and having to see how we were actually so connected and so similar, you know, when we started looking at our profiles and seeing where the gaps were in terms of, okay, we needed more people with different skills and all of that. But it was also great to leverage of those that, I mean, were not so visible, you know, within the department. And I mean, I know I was one of the sevens, and nobody believed until recently when we started doing different things, and they started believing and started including me more to say, how do we include you? You know, because we would like to get that other side of you. And as time evolved, we realized that there's actually more people that are a seven. A seven means you come up with innovative ideas, you're a visionary, and that has worked quite well, really. And the more we thought we understood the Enneagram, the more we just fell in love with it. And I mean, in our meetings, I was saying to Lizelle, we actually say, oh, by the way, you're an 8. Oh, by the way, you're a 9. You know, we need to be almost leverage of that information. And what has been key, I mean, we performed very well last year. I mean, we're still going strong this year. And I'd like to believe that the team activities that we did, I mean, we spoke about change. There was just, aside from the pandemic, we were in the middle of a huge program, you know, that changed how we operate, you know, as an institution. And the change resilience course that we did with you, Lizelle, I mean, it was just phenomenal, because we started focusing on the leadership to say, if our leaders are not prepared and not leading in the front, and the more we saw the leaders lead, you know, taking that leadership role and taking that servanthood leadership role as well in the process. And I mean, it still continues. I mean, you must see how we interact now, and where we actually have our meetings being virtual. So I was looking at all what were challenges in 2020, how we turned that around with some of the programs that we did with you. And we did the energy one, and we thought that's enough. And then we realized, no, there's more that we want to do with you. And yeah, I really like to believe that our team, the broader team, I mean, there's about 200 and something of us, have really fallen in love with the Innogram and your programs. And they've really helped us, and they continue to help us. And that's why we coming for more. And I mean, there's already lined up activities that we would like to do with you, because we've seen the impact. And had it not been for that, you can imagine, I remember we did that survey to understand how are people adopting, you know, to working remotely. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot has been said on some of the challenges, and yet we came up probably tops. I mean, people enjoyed every activity that we did online. People started showing up, and yeah, that was phenomenal. I mean, one of the key highlights was now when we had to understand, do we go just hardcore hybrid, or do we add a bit of flexibility to it? And I mean, the wellness part, because that's one of the things that we realized, that there's people that have withdrawn because of they enjoy connecting with people. And I mean, if I look at the team now, and across the board, I mean, we've been enjoying seeing different people coming to the office. And every time you think you've seen everybody, and then there's one person who comes back from maternity leave. And I mean, it's such a big reunion and collaboration. And I mean, like I said, we just launched one of the big programs, and having to have done a lot of your UAT, actually the entire testing cycle and the change management remotely. Yeah, it's been just phenomenal. And I mean, I think the drive as well from our side of focusing on the people, you know, aspects and being more in touch. I know there was a trust thing that we had to focus on quite, you know, with you helping us, and it worked well. And I mean, now, I guess the key plus of us coming to the office, it has just fast-tracked us connecting better. I mean, even having some of the team development sessions in person, and people enjoyed that. Okay, we're coming, so it's almost like easing it in, you know, for our teams to say, you're not just coming in, you know, to sit and be on a Teams meeting. However, we made it more fun and more engaging. And they've just called for more. That can we not have more sessions with Lizelle? And they've called it a therapy session.
Therapy session.
A therapy session. And it has worked wonders. I mean, it has helped us connect even more, you know, whether we are remote and now being hybrid and coming back and really making it worth a while for our team members to come back to the office. And I mean, we're 2 days in the office at the moment. And I mean, there's people who've been coming for more days because they say they actually enjoy it being there. And I would like to believe that it's all the work that we have done and are continuing to do with you. And yeah, well, it could have, I mean, for me, coming into a leadership role as well meant, how do we best connect? And that's where I started understanding, how do we connect better? What can we do, you know, to help the leadership team as well? So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for that wonderful feedback, Jabulili. I've definitely also enjoyed the journey and learned a lot. So one more question to you.
Yes.
What are the new issues? Are there new issues? Now that, because you started with a hybrid model March this year, February, March
Yes,
this year?
March this year.
Has there been new issues that emerged since then? What is the big things that you guys are struggling with? Because I mean, you're a 40,000 people organization.
Yeah, so like I indicated, so embedding a change, especially of a huge system that cuts across HR to finance to procurement. And I mean, that has been a key thing in terms of making sure that from a change management point of view, people are really connecting. So I mean, part of the sessions that we had with you in terms of change, we're now putting, initiatives in place to engage more. Because what we realize is that people have been hard at work and working. One of them, I mean, you spoke about change fatigue, and I mean, you can see it, is that we move slowly from 1 day in the office to 2 days in the office. And people have been saying, now that the COVID rules have been flexed, are we going to come back the whole week? And the take is we can never go back to, to what it used to be. We need to make sure that the hybrid continues, because it has worked. I mean, there's a lot of things that have worked. And what seemed to be a bit of a challenge is still being able to almost saying, how do we move away from Teams in meetings and Zoom meetings? And I mean, it has worked well for us in terms of collaborating in a telepresence, where we would have some of our colleagues remotely, and the leadership will be, in the office, and some people will be in the office. I mean, we had our first engagement sessions last week, actually. And I mean, initially we started with 2 days back-to-back sessions. And when the rules were flexed, we then got everybody into one room. And I mean, you must have seen how people are connecting. I think probably in terms of it being challenges, Liesl, I've seen more positives, and really because of the groundwork that has been done. And that's why now we're looking more into how do we, I mean, one of the programs that we've started is looking into our youth and saying, how are we upskilling our youth? Because they are the ones who actually, if they had their way, they would love to work remotely and never come back to the office. So that, I mean, it is bridging that gap between the generational differences. And they've been saying, and I mean, we've been challenging to say, we need to see you in the boardroom. What are we doing about that? So that's the new challenge, to say, yes, COVID has come and gone, and but where to from here? I mean, I think some of the colleagues on the call saying the same thing. And that's the biggest challenge, to say, how do you now keep people more wanting to come to the office more, and with purpose, but not just coming to the office to say, if I'm coming to the office, I have to come because I'm going to be collaborating. But some of the challenges, actually, come to think of it, it's been the noise. So you want a Teams call, and there's people who are just seeing each other for the first time, and they don't know you're on the Teams call. And then you have to kind of like, and all those interruptions that come through, where people are coming to you not realizing you've got your Bluetooth on and start speaking to you, and you are presenting. I mean, even now, as I'm presenting, everybody has been presenting, and when I start presenting and I'm home and I see they've been knocking, so I lock the door so that nobody comes in. So yeah, those interruptions, which, I mean, we've come to love and adore. I've seen your cats as well come through. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Jabba. I think that's a good move towards the end of this discussion, because one of the new challenges is, if we're back in the office and we're on a Teams meeting, now there's a lot of noise, because people are happy to see each other and they're chatting, and that's what you should be doing, because if you're back at the office, you want to be face to face. And it's almost the same problem we had if we think back to level 5, when everybody was home, and it was kids and cats and dogs, and and we were trying to look professional and, you know, get quiet. And then that was a problem. And now where we are now, it's a problem again. But it's a nice problem to have. And actually we're all much more relaxed about the dog and the cat and the friends and the noise and so on. And I love what you said as well about, you said hybrid is here to stay. But you also said, how do we get people to want to come back to the office? Now, often when I hear, how do we get people to want to come back to the office? It's because it's an organization who wants everybody back at the office. But for you, we want this hybrid model and we're going to stick to this hybrid model. So how do we make the 2 days, the 2 good days, so that you feel like this new driving in traffic again, commuting time, kids are used to being able to picking the kids up, what, to have those days where we are together as days of collaboration, and days that is enjoyable, but still also productive. Because sometimes I'm sure whether you were mentioning all these reunions, I know for me, the few times that I've been back to the office, that those first few days, you get no work done. It's just like catching up and oh wow, and talking, you know, getting the cup of coffee takes an hour and a half. Because when was the last time you got a cup of coffee and here's one of your colleagues and there's something I wanted to talk to you about, and then we check in and and that just again brings me to this, we're all just humans. Doesn't matter what level we are appointed at in an organization or where we are, we're all just human and we all missed people, but very few of us wants to go back to 100% back. And then you brought that other wonderful thing into to say, and we've got the young people who wants to work remotely. So how do we get them excited about being together sometimes? And the workshop, so we've done one face-to-face workshop with Jabulili's team about 2 months ago. So it was almost a year since the very first, we started with this Enneagram team development work. And I had this plan. We had 3 hours and I had this plan of all the stuff that we were going to discuss. And we literally we got to my first slide basically. And it was the first time that this team was together in the same room where we just explored each other's styles. And we used the whole, I even forgot that there was supposed to be a lunch break. We just used the whole 3 hours because people were interacting at such an amazing level. And I think again, now that basis is there, now it's okay to do a few onlines again. But to keep that balance between connect together and still being able to do some of the online work. And I guess that's a challenge for everybody. Thank you, Jabu. We've got 3 minutes left. I wish we had another hour. I often say, so Jabulili mentioned she's an Enneagram 7. I've got a very strong 7 and my thinking style is very 7. So usually like planning and designing for a workshop like this one, I've got about 25 slides and 25 ideas. And I'm thinking if it goes there, then we can do this. And if it goes there, so I had another 25 ideas for today, but we've run out of time. So thanks everybody. Please keep connecting. If you'd like somebody's contact details, you've all got my contact details. Let me know. Connect with us for conversations. We enjoy these conversations. We enjoy being thinking partners. So if you have an idea or a new project, just connect with us, with me or Beatrice or whoever, or get each other's contact details. We want to create a community of OD people who think together and who struggle together and who win together. Dennis, your story was so positive. I was like hanging on what you were saying, thinking, oh my goodness, that is so absolutely wonderful. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for making time to be with us today. And thank you, Beatrice, I think we've got some ideas for the new design. Oh, what I need to say quickly, somewhere in the middle of August, I can't remember the date now, we're starting with our new version of the team development workshop. It's going to be 4 half days, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, over 2 weeks, so that you can get to your own work as well. And we're taking registrations for that now. So we're still in the final stages of the design, and today's workshop would definitely give us some input into that. Yeah, so let me know if you're interested in the team development workshop, and thank you so much everybody for being here and for showing up and for sharing your stories. I'm going to hang around for a bit while my power lasts. So if you're not in a hurry, feel free to hang around and we can have a chat. But I'm going to stop the recording and officially say thank you, and until next month.